चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Today evening we are continuing the theme of 18 lessons from Ramayana as learnt by Sripad Ramanujacarya from his maternal uncle Srishaila Purna. So once again I will recite the verse which is consisting of all the 18 lessons. Tattvam hitam purushakara pumartya shaishya kashtartha panchakam akinchana deshalabha कार्तार्त्य वर्तन निवास मनुद्वयार्थ अशास्त्रोचन व्यसन षष्टि कला जयार्थाः. So these are 18 themes which were discussed between Ramanujacharya and Srishaila Purna. And till now we have discussed only 3 of them. We have looked at Hitam, the second one. Hitam means Sharanagati is the Hitam. Hitam means what is ultimately beneficial, Sharanagati. Purushakara means the importance of the mercy of the goddess of fortune. And this is what we discussed last time, if you recall, that without her grace, no one gets Sharanagati. Okay. We discussed this last time. And the fourth one is called Pumartha. Pumartha means the highest Purushartha. Is nothing but service to the Supreme Lord. Just to be a servant of the Lord is considered the highest Purushartha. On this also we have discussed these 2-3 points, like about how Hanumanji, he saw himself always as the lowest servant of Sugriva's army and Ram's army. He never thought himself to be very great. And the famous verse which is put on the screen, we have discussed this last time, where he assures Sita Devi by saying that don't worry, some of the monkeys are superior to me and some are equal to me. No one in the vicinity of Sugriva is inferior to me. So he's saying that no one in Sugriva's army is inferior to me, and hence if I could come, everybody would come. And he gives the logic that generally only the smallest servant is sent on errands, right? So we don't send somebody very senior. So this is about Pumartha, right? So we are continuing this discussion. And then we saw this verse also last time rather. How Ram and Lakshman very beautifully, they are massaging the feet of their Guru Vishwamitra after the conclusion of the 6-day yajna, and Subha, who is killed, but they are massaging and asking for more service. So they are saying, Imo munishartu lakinkarau samupastitau agnya pai munishreshta shasanam karavavakyam. Let us know if we can do anything else. Though they had come with Vishwamitra with the only purpose of killing Tataka and executing that particular sacrifice, but still they are eager to see if they can be of some more service to their Guru. So this is the mood of the highest Purushartha, service, where one wants more and more. Right. So we're continuing this. So this is where we are starting a discussion today on the highest Purushartha, that is service. There is a beautiful verse in the Hitopadesha that says that for different types of people, something different is Purushartha. Okay, so it begins by saying, Annam bhogyam manushyanam amritam tu divaupasam. It says that for common man, Annam is his Purushartha. So khana mil gaya to khush rehta hai. Correct? So the proof of this again is in the Ramayana only. There is this beautiful story of how Bharata with his army, when he's coming towards Chitrakoot to meet Lord Ram and to convince him to come back to Ayodhya, at that time they take a halt at the ashram of Bharadwaja Muni. And Bharadwaja Muni is giving a huge treat to everyone in Bharata's army. He is giving food according to everyone's liking. And there are lakes, there are facility for massaging their feet, and so many things are there. So it is said after eating the feast, all the soldiers of Bharata army, they are saying this particular verse which is on the screen. Now eva ayodhyam gamishyamo na gamishyama dandakan kushalam bharatasyastu ramasyastu tatasukam. They are saying that we don't want to go back to Ayodhya. Neither are we interested to go to the forest, Dandakaranya, or wherever Lord Rama is sitting. Kushalam bharatasyastu. Let Bharata be happy wherever he is. Ramasyastu tata sukam. Let Lord Ram also be happy wherever he is. Sabko apne apne jagah pe khush rehne do, no problem. As far as we are concerned, we feel that we will better stay in this Bharadwaja Muni's ashram forever, because we are getting good food over here, and what else do we need? So this is the Purushartha for common humans, which is depicted by the soldiers of Bharata army. That the common man is very happy when he has got food. So just like it is said also that when you go to a marriage, people in the marriage are interested in different things, right? The girl's parents are interested how much the groom is earning. The groom is interested how beautiful the bride is. Everybody has their own interest. But most of the people who come for the wedding, they have only one interest. How is the food? Right? And if the food is good, they will eat, they will enjoy, and they'll go back. They have nothing else to do with whatever is happening. They just need a good meal. So, annam bhogya manushyanam. So, for most manushya, annam is their purushartha, to get good food. Amritau tu divaukasam. For the devatas, amrita is purushartha. If they get amrita, they are satisfied. Right, so we see all the stories in a shastra where they are doing samudra manthan, or they are doing something just to ensure that they get amrita. Right, so that amrita is the nectar of immortality, which gives them that phenomenally long life, so that they can enjoy in Swarga for a long period of time. Right. Similarly, that verse basically says, the second part of that verse says, for other animals, very interesting. It says that for a dog, Purushartha is vomit. Now, this sounds very grotesque to hear, but I was just trying to read up on the internet also. It says that the dog likes to lick up vomit. It may be its own vomit, or sometimes they have observed that even if there is a cat or some other animal and that vomits, the dog is ready to lick that also up. So, we see that in modern times, people like to give dog pedigree and all that. But it seems that the dog is very satisfied with vomit. Mala. Mala is the Purushartha for the dog. You'll see there is a Bhagavatam verse also, so where it talks about animals that eat stool and vomit, and Prabhupada translates there as hogs and dogs. Right, so hog is also, the dog is considered in that same category as a hog, because the hog likes to eat stool and the dog likes to lick up vomit. But both vomit and stool are considered mala. But that is Purushartha for these animals. So for every animal, there is a Purushartha. For cow, the Purushartha is grass. There is grass, the cow is happy. Similarly, that Hitopadesh verse concludes by saying, for a sadhu, Purushartha is service. So for the sadhu like Hanuman, for the great devotee, service to the Supreme Lord is Purushartha, is what he is aspiring for, unlike the other guys. Okay, so this is briefly about Purushartha. We have, of course, discussed this also long back. So now today we will actually spend some time with the fifth characteristic, which is Seshatvam. Tattvam hitam purushakara pumartha sheshya. Sheshya means Sheshatvam. So the fifth lesson from the Ramayana is called as Sheshatvam. What is Sheshatvam? Let's define that and then go into it to see various examples of how we understand Sheshatvam being exhibited. So first of all, this word Shesha appears in Panini's explanation of grammar. So there is something called Kashika, which is a book that elaborates Sanskrit grammar. It says Uktad Anyaha Seshaha. So that is a verse in Kashika. Uktad Anyaha Seshaha means, Uktad means whatever is being spoken about. Okay, so in every discussion or in every forum, there is something, there are certain things that are being spoken about. Anya, other than that, whatever is there is called as Sesha. Okay. Other than that. Like there's a simple example to give, like our CA bill is there now, the Citizenship Amendment Act. So what is being spoken about? Basically, it talks about giving citizenship to persecuted minorities, Hindus, Parsi, Christians, Sikh, this, that. Anya, what is left out, only the Muslims are left out by Allah. So that is Sesha. So whatever is being spoken about, what is left behind is called as Sesha. So anyway, coming to the point in the Ramayana, the Lord is the main Uktad in the Vedas, because all the Vedas are primarily talking about the Supreme Lord. Correct? So, Eko Bahunam, Yo Vidadati Kaman, Eko Bahushyamaham. So you will see many such verses where Ekaha, that one person on whom the entire Vedic scripture is trying to put their focus, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whoever is there else is called as Sesha. That means all the living entities are Sesha. You know, they are all there. That is the Anyaha, the remaining. They're called as Sesha. So the idea always is, in this context, is that whoever is the main, he's the primary personality. And at least in the example of the Supreme Lord being the main Uktad in the Vedas, everyone else is Seshaha also means that everyone else is meant for his service. Okay, so just like, so that's why Lakshmana, he symbolizes, so everyone in Srishti is considered Sesha with respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But it is said that Lakshman symbolizes Sesha in the greatest manner. So who is symbolizing Sesha in the highest degree? If you ask the question, then that is Lakshman. He is symbolizing Sesha at the highest level. Okay, so that's what we are going to see. Right. So Sesha has many other several meanings also, even in the context of prasad. Just like when we cook bhoga for the Supreme Lord, when we cook bhoga, for whom are we cooking bhoga? The Uktad, or the person for whom we are cooking bhoga, is the Lord. And whatever remains after the bhoga is cooked is called as Sesha. That's called as prasad. Okay, so prasad is also called as Sesha in that context. Even if you see the birth of Lakshman and Shatrugnan, it came out of Sesha only, right? So we all know, for example, the kheer was first given by Dashrath Maharaj to Kausalya. Then whatever was remaining, half of that was given to Sumitra, from which Lakshman came. So that Lakshman came out of the kheer, which was again Sesha only, right? Because the first part was given to Kausalya, and what was remaining was given to Sumitra, so that she could become pregnant with Lakshman. And then again, whatever was left, half of that was given to Bharat, and again the Sesha of that was again given to Sumitra, from which Shatrugna came. So that is why Lakshman is considered like a servant or Seshaha to Lord Ram, and Shatrugnan is considered always serving Bharata. Okay, because so this is how the Sesha concept works. In fact, if you see strict Brahminical culture, it basically says that whenever we cook food, we cook bhoga, whoever we have cooked it for, that person should be given the first share. Okay, so just like we all know that since we are primarily cooking for the Lord, we give it to the Lord. But if somebody is coming home, let's say you invited a guest home, so why is it that you can't eat before the guest? The idea is that otherwise it becomes you are giving your Sesha to that guest. Okay, so you offer the food, bhoga, to the Lord, and then the first helping is served to the guest whom you have invited. And then only you can take whatever is remaining, because then that otherwise it becomes like you have eaten and you give whatever you have eaten, the say show of that to the Lord. In fact, this principle, if you see, if you want to practice to a very great degree, uh, that's the Brahminical tradition, that becomes very strict, and it actually becomes maybe for some people little difficult also. So, for example, it says that one reason why a very strict Brahminical culture does not recommend eating in a hotel is because in a hotel, if if the food was given, let's say some criminal came and sat and he had lunch in the hotel, then whatever is remaining in their pots, that is sesha of that criminal. And then when we are sitting and eating, basically we are getting the sesha of someone who was indulging in some criminal activity. So these are very subtle concepts, but if you go into this a little bit more, you can understand why the strict Brahminical culture never allowed people to just go and eat anywhere, because you are just ending up eating the remnants. Sesha is also in English, you can call as remnants of some XYZ person. Generally, whenever, at least in our standard lectures, when we hear the word remnant, we feel that remnant only means if someone has eaten in a plate, then what is on that plate is his remnant. That's a very gross understanding of remnant. But the idea is that whatever was left behind in the vessels, that is also considered as remnant only, correct? Because whatever was left in the vessel, that is also considered remnant. So in fact, there is at least one Acharya who, when he talks about that famous verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Uchchishta lepan anumodvito dujehi, where that boy Narada, he eats the remnants of the great sages. Generally, we picturize it in our mind thinking that the sages ate and their whatever pattal was there, they gave it to that boy. Perhaps it may be like that, but another interpretation of that verse is also that the cooking was done primarily for the sages, and they were served, and whatever was left behind in the pots, that was all sesha and uchishta, basically as in it was all the left behind stuff. And then that the boy ate, and then he got, love of God or whatever. So then that we know that Bhagavatam, first canto, 5th chapter talks in detail about Narada boy's experiences. So this concept of sesha is very powerful. Okay, now coming quickly back to the Ramayana, because that's our discussion here. Yeah, the Mahaprasad of deities, everything is based on sesha only. Yes, yes. Because when you cook for the Lord, not only in the temple, even in our home when we cook, since we are offering the Lord first, whatever is left in the vessel is all remnants only of the Lord. And that is what is being given. Okay, so let's go ahead in our discussion. So this Seshatvam which is there is symbolized primarily to a great degree by Lakshman. So we are going to see in great detail today at least 4 or 5 stories from the Ramayana where Lakshman shows his Seshatva. The first story is in Balakanda. So in Balakanda, if you see carefully, this is basically Balakanda 18th chapter where Vishwamitra arrives in the kingdom of Maharaj Dasharath. And the interesting thing is Vishwamitra is asking only for Ram. If you see, there are actually 3 chapters. Chapter 19, chapter 20, chapter 21. In all the 3 chapters, the discussion is only about Ram. In the 19th chapter of the Balakand, our Vishwamitra Muni comes and asks Dasharath Maharaj that I want Ram with me to the forest. Okay, so look at that verse which I have put up on the screen, 119.8 from Balakanda. Swaputram Raj Shardhula Ramam Satyaparakramam Kakapakshadharam Shuram Jeshtam Me Datumarhasi. Vishwamitra is saying, Swaputra, I want your son Raja Shardhula, he's like a lion, Ramam Satyaparakramam, and I want Rama. He's very clearly asking only for Ram, he's not asking for anybody else. Kakapaksha dharam shuram. Kakapaksha means he has black hair. His hair is as black as the color of the crow, which is jet black. Very beautiful looking, black hair. Shuram, he is very valorous, powerful. Jeshtam, he is the eldest of your sons. Datu marhasi, please give that boy to me, he says. And in that entire chapter 19, if you see Balakanda, Vishwamitra explains why he wants, he says he's doing sacrifice. And he's repeatedly making it very clear he wants only Ram. He has not asked for Lakshman. He has not asked for anybody else, in fact. Okay, then you will see chapter 20, which is basically the response of Dasharath Maharaj. Okay, so when Dasharath Maharaj, when he hears from Vishwamitra Muni that he's wanting my son Ram, then he becomes extremely emotional, frightened, insecure. And look at that beautiful verse. This the second verse that I put on the screen is a very famous verse from the Bhagavatam Balakanda. Sorry, from the Ramayana Balakanda. Una shodasha varsho me Ramo Rajiva Lochanaha na yuddha yogyattamasya pashyami saharakshasaihi. Dasharath says, Una shodasha varsho me. My Ram is only 16 years old. 16 years is a young child. Ramo Rajiva Lochanaha. He's comparing Ram's eyes to that of a lotus. And that's done with a very specific reason. Because the nature of the lotus is that when the sun rises, the lotus blossoms. And when the sun sets, the lotus closes. So basically, Dasharath wants to tell Vishwamitra Muni that my son Rama, he gets up in the morning only when the sun rises. And when the sun sets, very early he goes to bed. Okay, he cannot stay whole night like that. He is not like that. He's Rajiva Lochana. Rajiva Lochana means he's not going to stay up entire night. And hence, na yuddha yoga mata asya pashyami saha rakshase. How can he fight against Rakshasas? Because Rakshasas means by definition, those who are awake at night, right? So that's one of the definition of a Rakshas. One who is always awake at night time. And we all know this actually, that traditionally until this modern electricity came, people would actually sleep very early in India and everywhere. Nowadays, most people, unfortunately, they've lost that habit only of sleeping early. They tend to just prolong and on and on and on. So I think as devotees also, we have to see if we can sleep early. That would be something very good. Just a couple of hours after sunset, at least by 9:30 or whatever, if you can go to bed, you can get up relatively early in the morning as well. So basically, that is what Dasharath is telling Vishwamitra Muni, that my son is 16-year-old and he sleeps once the sun sets. How is he going to fight with the Rakshasa? But the beautiful point is that entire chapter, again, chapter 20, Dasharath Maharaj does not say anything about Lakshman. The whole discussion is only about Ram. Okay, so in the 19th chapter also the discussion was about Ram. 20th chapter also discussion about Ram. Then in the 21st chapter, what happens? If you see Balakand, 21st chapter, Vasishtha is giving assurance to Dasharath. He's telling Dasharath, don't worry. This personality who has come, Vishwamitra, he himself is very powerful. And he is going to empower your son to face this whole thing. Look at that one sample verse I've taken. 1:21:20. It is from the Balakand, chapter 21, text number 20. Evam viryo mahateja vishwamitro mahashayaha narama gamane rajan samshayam gantum arhasi. Basically, it says, don't worry. This evam viryo mahateja Vishwamitra, this Vishwamitra is there. He is teja. He's very powerful. Mahashayaha is extremely famous and powerful sage. Narama gamane rajan samshayam. Don't have any worries and fears in sending Ram along with him. So if you carefully notice in the 21st chapter also, Lakshman's name nowhere comes only in the picture. Okay, then in the 22nd chapter, if you see in half a verse, it says that on Vasishtha's advice, Dasharath called for Ram and Lakshman. Okay, so that's all that is mentioned. Then Ram and Lakshman come. Then after, so that is in the first verse of the 22nd chapter. Then again, if you see the 22nd chapter, verse number 2 and 3, it again talks only about Ram. Krita swastityana nammatra pitra dasharatena cha purodasa vasishtena mangalairavi mantritam sapurtram murjanyupagraya raja dasharatastada dadau kaushika putraya suprite nantaratmanam. If you see these two verses, it describes the send-off given. And in the send-off also, if you carefully see, Lakshman is not mentioned. It says that Matra Pitra, that means Ram bowed at the feet of his mother and then father. Now that is also very interesting because always the bowing down is first done to the mother. That's why Matra Devo Bhava and then only Pitra Devo Bhava. Okay, so it's always like this. So if the child has to, if the boy, anybody has to take blessings from parents, first you fall at the feet of your mother and then at the feet of the father and then at the feet of Guru. So mother's position is always first. So again, you see that in the Ramayana. Matra is coming first in the verse and then Pitra, Dasharatha. And Vasishtha did all this Mangalam prayers, correct? Because third is Guru. After Mata, Pita, there is Guru. You see that order being maintained. And then Saputra Murdhanyupagraya. So that means our Dasharath Maharaj, it is said, he smelt the hair of Lord Ram. Like a father smells the head of his child. So he smelled the head of Lord Rama. And then he handed him over to Vishwamitra. And then you will see in text 6, now here Lakshman will come, perhaps just for the second time, literally these 4 chapters. Vishwamitro yayavagre tato ramo mahashayaha kakapakshadaro dhanvi tamcha saumitran bagat. So it says that Vishwamitra started going out and along with Rama kakapakshadaro, that means Lord Rama was there. Just Saumitri means the son of Sumitra, right? Anvagat. So that means Lakshman was following. So if you carefully read these 3-4 chapters, the whole focus was about Lord Ram only. So that is why we see Seshatvam. Seshatvam means the principal character is Ram. Vishwamitra is asking Ram. Dasharath is apprehensive about sending Ram. Vasishtha assures that don't worry, Ram can be sent. And the farewell is all about Ram only. Now, if you see Lakshman, it is like, if you see, if someone were an egoistic person, he may think, what is this? Vishwamitra didn't ask for me. My father also did not cry for me. Vasishtha also did not say, don't worry, Lakshman is also there now with Ram. He will take care. Nothing. Am I not important? So generally, people with some kind of false ego would obviously feel that. And it's pretty natural. But if you see the Ramayana, you see the ideal character of someone who is displaying this characteristic of Seshatvam. He is just there in the background. That's it. Right? And he's happy like that. He's not feeling any inferiority complex or anything that, what is this? Nobody is asking for me. Even the blessings which are offered, everything is related to Lord Ram only. All the blessing, the send-off. And I'm just, as if I'm some paraphernalia, just accompanying him. Okay, but the beauty is Lakshman did not feel little bit also like that, because he's just happy being the Sesha of Lord Ram. He's just there. Ram is the central figure, and he's just there accompanying him wherever he goes. Okay, so this is a prominent example of Seshatvam. Let's see more on this. Okay, so the next great elaboration of Seshatva, of course, one great elaboration we already discussed last time, where we saw, because I'm not going to repeat that part again. So in that story also you see Seshatvam, where Ram has to go to the forest and Lakshman insists that no matter what, I am going to come. He is not saying that, I was not asked to go. He is, in fact, we saw that in great detail, right? How Lakshman is falling at the feet of both Sita and Rama. And in this way, very easily, he gets permission. Okay, we saw that as part of the third thing, that you need Sita Devi's mercy, to obtain anything. And there are so many beautiful verses in that section also, where basically he says that I'm going to be Jagrata Swapataschate. This very famous verse comes in the Ayodhya Kand 31st chapter, where he says that I am coming to serve you Jagrata Swapata. When you're awake, when you're asleep. In both conditions, I'm going to be there serving you. Okay, so that's also an indication of Seshatva. Anyway, let's fast forward the story. So now Ram, Lakshman and Sita start their, they start going right? They cross over the Ganga and they come to the place of Guha. So just before that, when they come to the place of Guha, they have a discussion. So this is a beautiful section. In this section, you will see Ram testing Lakshman and how he's testing him. So basically, the synopsis of this 53rd chapter of the Ayodhya Kand is that Ram wants to send Lakshman back to Ayodhya. Okay, so Lakshman has come with Ram and Sita, but he wants to send him back to Ayodhya. So how does he do that? Okay, he does that in an amazing way. If you see all those verses in this 53rd chapter, you will see Lord Ram making Lakshman very emotional about everything that is happening in Ayodhya. Let's look at some of the verses to understand their conversation. Look at the first one. Dhruvamadhya Maharajo Dukkam Sopiti Lakshmana Kritakamatu Kaikei Tushta Bhavitum Arhati. So basically, Ram starts telling Lakshman on that night that Dhruvamadhya Maharajo, today our king Dasharath, Dukkham Sopiti Lakshmana. He's certainly having a bad night. You know, our father will not be able to sleep tonight carefully. Why will he be not be able to sleep tonight carefully? Krita Kamatu Kaikei, because of whatever this Kaikei has done, Tushta Bhavitum Arhati. You know, she has actually troubled our father like anything, and our father is not going to be able to sleep nicely. And then he says, Kohi avidwan apipuman pramadaya kritatyajet chanda anuvartitam putram tata mama Eva Lakshmana. You know, when you read these verses, you feel how come Lord Ram is speaking all these things so openly. So basically, if you see the 10th verse, Ram is telling, in this verse that I read, Ram is telling Lakshman, which man, however deluded because of a woman, at his own will and pleasure abandons a son like myself. Okay. I mean, if you think about it, Ram is here kind of putting himself as the object of pity. He's saying, I'm such a good son. Which father would have done this? Okay, so in one sense, he's questioning what the action that Dasharath did. But more importantly, he's trying to say, Pramadeya Krite Tyajet, that how our Kaikei, she's so evil that she managed to make our father do such an act of banishing me to the forest. And then look at what he tells about Bharata. Now, this is very surprising. He says in the next verse, in the 11th verse, he says, Sukhi Bata Sabharya cha Bharata Kaikei Sutta. Let this Bharat be very happy with his wife. Okay, and let him enjoy Ayodhya very nicely. Muditan Koshala Neko Yo Bhokshati Adi Rajavar. He's going to enjoy. Then he says many things actually. He says that let Bharat enjoy, and our father is going to have a very tough time. And I suspect that he may even not even continue to live. He says that Kaikei has come to our family only to bring the death of Dasharath Maharaj. All this Ram is telling Lakshman. Now, why is he telling? Now, this will be very clear now. Then finally, towards the end of this conversation, 15th and 16th verse, very interesting. He says, Api idani na Kaikei saubhagya madamohita kaushalyam cha sumitram cha samprabhadhet matakrite. Ram tells Lakshman, my dear Lakshman, you know what is going to happen now? First of all, our father's life is in danger. Besides that, your mother and my mother are going to suffer a lot. Because your mother and my mother, they are related to us, right, in some way. So Kaikei is going to take a lot of revenge against them. And Kaikei, because she is going to be the queen mother after Bharat becomes king, she will ensure that both our mothers have a tough time. So basically, he says that I don't think that we should, you should be here anymore. Then he comes to the point actually. He tells, Masma Matakarana Devi Sumitra Dukkham Avase Ayodhyam ite evatvam Kale Pravisha Lakshmana. He says that, my dear Lakshman, you do one thing. You immediately go back now. Okay, you don't sit here. You go back to Ayodhya, because if you go back to Ayodhya, you can take good care of your mother and my mother, because your mother and my mother are going to suffer a lot because of this Kaikeyi. Okay, so what you see, happening very interesting in this particular set of verses is Ram is building up. He's basically building up by saying that Kaikeyi is very evil and Bharat is going to come. And in fact, he even apparently puts Bharat in a little bit, in not a very positive light. He says that he's going to come and just enjoy with his wife and have a good time ruling over the country. But he doesn't say much about Bharat. He says only this much. But then he says that our father's life is in danger and both our mothers are also going to suffer phenomenally. Now you may say, why is Ram saying all this? Okay, so why is Ram building up all these things? So it becomes very clear. He is building up all these things because he wants to send our Lakshman back to Ayodhya. Right, he wants to send him back. He doesn't want him to be here anymore. So that's the purpose. So that actually we start to understand that, when you come to the 16th verse. So in this way, Ram is basically very intelligently trying to tell Bharat that Lakshman, that you please now go back. So that's why it is called as a test. Now, why is it called as a test? Because Ram genuinely did not believe that all this is going to happen. So how do we understand that? We understand that because when later Bharat comes there with the army, Ram doesn't misunderstand. Ram immediately understands why he has come. So it's not that Ram truly believes that Bharat will be very insensitive and not bother about Kaushalya and Sumitra and so on. But still he says this to test Lakshman, because the thing is, generally people are emotional about their mother. And most people may feel that, okay, if my mother is in trouble, then I better go. So Ram in this way builds up his whole conversation to convince Lakshman that your mother will be in difficulty, so please go back. Okay. Now, when this happens, let us see Lakshman's response. And that's because it's a test. Okay. So as I told you, Ram is actually saying all these things to test Lakshman. Okay. Now let's see Lakshman's response, which is very beautiful. I think instead of going forward, I just went backward. Just give me a second. Yeah. So this is considered a very beautiful verse by Lakshman in response to whatever Ram said. Look at that. Nacha Sita Tvaya Hina Nachaham Api Raghava Muhurtam Api Jivavo Jalan Matsya Vivo Dhrutau. So the first thing very interesting, Ram had never spoken anything about Sita. Ram had only told Lakshman to go back to Ayodhya. In fact, Ram concludes that discussion by saying that myself and Sita will go to the forest. So Sita was never being told by Ram to go back or something. But Lakshman invokes Sita first. Because again, the reason is, you'll have to remember the previous point, Purushakara. That any time you're addressing the Supreme Lord for any favor, you cannot forget or ignore the goddess of fortune. So he brings her also on his side, so that he gets that Shakti, that mercy of Sita Devi. He says, Nacha Sita Tvaya Hina. Sita is not going to be away from you. Nachaham Api Raghava. Even I am not going to go anywhere away from you. So one may say that Sita was never in the question only because Ram never said anything about Sita. But he is intentionally doing that because he wants the mercy of Sita Devi also here. So he's saying Sita Devi will also not be separate from you. I am also not going to become separate. Muhurtam api jivavo. Even one muhurta. One muhurta is a very short period of time in this context. Even one muhurta api jivavo, I can't live without you. Just like Jalan Matsya Vivodhrito, just like a fish cannot exist without water. So this is a very famous example that all of us give. Fish outside of water. I have not exactly till now come across any other verse. Maybe someone can help me if they have come across some other verse where this fish out of water is being spoken in our Shastras in a verse. Okay, but here in the Ramayana it comes. Lakshman is using this example. Lakshman is saying that it will be like fish out of water. Fish out of water, we all know, right? Because a fish out of water cannot stay for even a short period of time. So basically, Lakshman wants to say that away from you, I will just die. Not only I, even Sita. So he includes Sita also in his own, category, saying that both of us will die if we are away from you, even for a very short period of time. And here Ramanujacarya learned from Srishaila Purna also that Ayodhya is compared here to a pot of milk. So if Ram is compared to the water, Ayodhya is being compared to the pot of milk. So the idea is Lakshman wants to tell that for me going Ayodhya may be like milk, but I am like fish. And if you put me in milk, then the milk will also, then I will die, because even though milk may be superior to water, but the fish needs water only and not milk. Okay, so you will see that in the next verse. Nahi tatam na shatrugna na sumitram param tapa drishtum ichheyam adyaham swargam va apitvavina. Lakshman is telling Ram that nahi tatam, as far as my father is concerned, I'm not missing him. Na Shatrugna, I'm not missing Shatrugna also. I'm not missing my mother Sumitra also. None of these people I'm missing. Of course, he doesn't tell about Kaikeyi and Bharat because he's obviously angry with them. But he basically says that our father, our mother, my brother Shatrugna, I am not missing anybody. Dashtum Ichchayam Adyaham. I just want to be with you always. Swargam va api tvaya vina. Even Swarga is useless without you for me. Okay, so these two verses are considered a great expression of the Sheshatvam by Lakshmana, because he is very clearly expressing his position of Sheshatvam, that is just, wherever Ram is, he's just going to be there like an extra, like a person just accompanying, right? He has no separate existence. The Sheshatvam can also be visualized like some paraphernalia. Okay, so just like, if a man goes somewhere, then perhaps his mobile phone will also go with him. So the mobile phone is like a Sesha in today's world. The person is the main thing, but wherever he goes, his mobile will just go along with him, right? It's not that you have to tell someone that please bring your mobile today for the program. You don't have to, because wherever a person goes, his mobile always goes. So the mobile, all kinds of such things, my wristwatch, everything is considered like Sesha. Because wherever the main person is, all these things automatically accompany. Similarly is the position of Lakshman, and this is considered the ideal mood for a devotee, where each of us also could aspire to be like a Sesha, just serving the Lord as if, we were just an inanimate object, not even expecting any special recognition, because inanimate object is not expecting any special recognition. Like we saw in the previous verses also, in the context of Ram and Lakshman going along with Vishwamitra Muni, Lakshman was not even given a send-off. But that is what Seshatvam means. You're just there, that's it. Ram is going, you're going. No questions asked. Okay, so this is about Seshatvam. One more story. So now, because one may ask, from where did Lakshman get such a quality of Seshatvam? Okay, so how come Lakshman had such an amazing quality of Seshatvam? Somebody may ask this question. For that, the answer is given Lakshman's mother, Sumitra. So Sumitra is considered the ideal mother. Okay, so we are going to see some verses of Sumitra spoken by Sumitra to Lakshman while sending Lakshman off to the forest. And there you will see that this particular mood of Seshatvam was imbibed in him by his mother. Okay, and there are some very important lessons for that. So let's go into the verses first. So if you see, this is Ayodhya Kand chapter 40, where Lakshman is going to Sumitra to beg permission to go to the forest along with Lord Ram. Look at what Sumitra says. Mavandamanam rudati mata saumitram apravit hitakama mahabahum murtini upagraya Lakshmanam. So first thing it is said is that when Lakshman came to Sumitra, she started crying, rudati. It's very natural. Your son is going away for 14 years, you will automatically cry. Okay, so the mother starts crying. And what does she do? She embraces Lakshman and Murdhna. She smells his, the head. Actually, if you see in Shastras, many places you will see this, that the father or the mother, they smell the head of the son or the daughter or whatever. So that's considered a very traditionally intimate way of showing love by the parents to their children, where they would smell the head of the child. And that was considered very good, actually. In fact, there is a Vedic verse also, I'll try to give the reference next time, which says that every day parents should, at least the father should do this, smell the head of the, what is that verse? Angad Angad Sambhavasi Hridaya Tatichayate Atma Putra Namasya Shadiva Sharadashatam. So there is a verse also which one is supposed to tell by embracing the child. Angad Angad Sambhavasi, embrace the child and smell the head and basically say, give the blessing that you live for 100 years. So it's all part of that. So first thing, Sumitra embraces her son, smells his hair, and starts crying. And then what does she say? That's more important. Look at that. Verse number 8 and 9. Lakshmanam tveva mukta sa samsiddhim priya ragavam Sumitra gaccha gaccheti punah punaruvachatam. So this is a beautiful verse, which basically says that Sumitra told Lakshman, I want to focus on the second line because that's the focus area. Sumitra gaccha gaccheti punah punaruvachatam. Gaccha gaccheti means he was saying, go, serve Lord Ram. Let there be no other question now. We are not here to discuss anything else. You are going to serve Lord Ram and that's it. That's why, if you see the second part of the verse, that's the focus area. Sumitra gaccha gaccheti punah punaruvachatam. That means again and again she was saying, please go and serve Lord Ram. Okay, so here you see Sumitra's nature coming out. She doesn't want to create any emotional bondage and hold Lakshman back. She wants to just send him to the forest with Ram. It's kind of quite contrasting to Kaushalya meeting Ram, because Kaushalya was always telling Ram, don't go. But because Kaushalya did not want Ram to go to the forest, but now that Ram is going, Sumitra is telling Lakshman, go. No question of staying back. And then the 9th verse is considered a beautiful verse, which is a lesson for every mother. Look at that. Ramam Dasharatham Viddhi Mam Viddhi Janakatmajam Ayodhya Matavim Viddhi Gachatha Yata Sukam. Sumitra tells Lakshman, Ramam Dasharatham Viddhi. My dear son, look at Ram as Dasharath. From today onwards, your father is Ram. Okay, your father is Ram. Mam Viddhi Janakatmajam. Look at Janaki, Sita Devi, as myself. That means Sita is your mother from now. Ayodhyam Atvitam Viddhi. Ayodhyam Atvitam Viddhi means look at Ayodhya as the forest. Ayodhya is the forest now because Ram is not here in Ayodhya, so Ayodhya is the forest. Gacche thate yata sukam, and be very happily situated in their service. So this is a very beautiful verse spoken, set of verses. I mean, I have put up only 3 verses here, but if you read that 40th chapter of the Ayodhya Kand, you will see many more beautiful verses spoken by Sumitra to her son Lakshman. So it is said that the mother is the cause of such ideal quality in the child, and that Seshatvam was there in Lakshman because of his mother's such kind of instructions. Okay, so the mother is very important, and that's why we see that later only, the previous story which I just narrated about Ram testing Lakshman happened after this event, right? So after having heard from his own mother that I am supposed to serve you, O Lord Ram, like my father, and Janaki as my mother, there is no question of going back, right? So because the son had got such value systems from his mother, he was fixed in his devotional service. So it is said that Srishaila Purna taught Ramanujacarya that every woman should be like Sumitra. And every woman should give at least one son for the sake of the Sampradaya. That means the Sri Sampradaya they were talking about, but the point here is when I heard the statement, I inevitably remembered our Srila Prabhupada, who would tell Indians that give one son every family, because those days in 1970, every family would have 4 or 5 sons. And Prabhupada would say, at least give one son for devotional service, who can preach the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when I read about this whole thing, heard about what Ramanujacarya learned from this particular lesson of Sumitra, it's unavoidable that we remember our Srila Prabhupada, who also had the same mood as Ramanujacharya, where he wanted every family to ensure that their children are engaged in devotional service, right? Just like Sumitra was eagerly blessing Lakshman and saying, Gacha, Gacha, please go and serve Lord Ram. There is no question of staying back here in Ayodhya. Ayodhya is forest for you now. Okay, so this is how every mother should be, it is said. And if every mother is like this, then only there is going to be, the ideal devotee child that is going to come. Okay, so that's a very important lesson here. Okay, let's go ahead. More on Seshatvam. Okay. So now we are fast forwarding in the story, and we are going to see Lakshman's mood towards Lord Ram. This is very beautiful. So this part now we are fast forwarding in the Ramayana to Kishkinda Kand. So in Kishkinda Kand, this is the Kishkinda Kand, Canto 4, 4:40:12 means the 40th chapter, text number 12. So here what is happening is our Hanumanji has arrived. And our Hanumanji is, sorry, this is Aranya Kand only. It's not a Kishkinda Kand, it's Aranya Kand. Oh, 1 second. I think maybe it's Kishkinda. Sorry, yeah, this is, okay, it's Kishkinda Kand only. 4 means Kishkinda. Okay, it's not 40, it is 4:4:12 actually. That's why I got confused. It is not chapter 40, it is chapter 4, text number 12. So I think there was a mistake in the slide. It's 4:4:12. Okay, the context of this verse I will tell, then we will discuss this verse in detail. This is considered a very important verse. What was Lakshman's mood towards Lord Ram? Okay, generally, we think that Lakshman was serving Lord Ram because Lord Ram was his elder brother. It is correct also in a way, because he was elder brother, he was serving. But then again, if you see very carefully in the Ramayana, the difference between the brothers is not too much. Okay, so just like it is said, Lord, because they were born to different mothers, right? So it's not that they were born every successive year or something. Okay. Lord Ram was born on Navami, that is Ram Navami. And it is said Bharata was born on Dashami, 1 day late. Okay, the Dashami is Bharata. And Ekadashi is Lakshman Shatrugna. So they were just, so basically the difference between all the 4 brothers were a couple of days, few hours, that's it. So even though Ram was certainly elder, it is not that there was a big age gap or something. Actually, they were all of the same age only. Okay, and but still, technically, Lakshman was younger by a day or 2. I think 2 days he was younger. Bharat was younger by 1 day. But still, somebody may feel that if someone is just younger by 1 or 2 days, should he still be like a servant to this person, elder brother? Okay, so now you will see in this particular verse why Lakshman is expressing such a mood. So the context here is that Hanumanji has come, and in chapter 3 of the Kishkinda Kand, Hanumanji presents himself as a secretary of Sugriv, and he introduces himself to Ram and Lakshman. And then what happens? Ram tells Lakshman to introduce both of them, that is Ram and Lakshman, to Hanumanji. So Ram doesn't speak anything actually. Ram is quiet. Okay. So Lakshman is the one who is introducing both of them, Ram and Lakshman, to Hanuman. Okay. So the question is, how does he introduce himself? That is very interesting. Of course, he introduces Ram very nicely. He tells him that this is Ram, he is the son of Dasharath, and he basically tells him that there is no one who doesn't like him. He basically says that Raja Dasharato Nama Dyutiman Dharma Vatsalah. He is the Dharmik, is the most resplendent son of Dasharath. And then he tells Sharanya Sarva Bhutanam Pitu Nirdesha Parakaha. The characteristic of Lord Ram, Lakshman says, is Sharanya Sarva Bhutanam. He wants to give Sharana or Sharanagati to everybody. Pitu Nirdesha Paraga. He's great at following his father's instructions. Jefto Dasarathasya Ayam Putranam Gunavattaraha. So he's the elder son and is filled with good qualities. So he introduces Ram very nicely. The question now is, how will he introduce himself? Because he's also there, Lakshmana. So that is the verse I put up on the screen. He says, Ahamasya varabrata gunaidasyamupagataha kritagnyasya bahuknyasya lakshmano namanamataha. It's a very beautiful verse. Look at what he says. Aham, myself, asya avarabrata, I am the younger brother. Then he says, gunaidasyamupagataha. I am his servant because of his unimaginable good qualities. So look at how he presents. He's not presenting himself that he's subordinate to Ram just because of age difference. He's saying that I am subordinate to him because of his guna. And his primary guna, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is giving shelter to all conditioned souls. And he has all these amazing qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I am a servant of that. Kritagnyasya bahuknyasya lakshmano namanamataha. Right? And I have obtained this servitude and I'm extremely grateful for that. And my name is Lakshman. So this is how he introduces himself to Hanumanji. So in this verse, we understand the reason for the Seshatvam of Lakshman. And what was the reason for the Seshatvam? The reason for Seshatvam was that he was a servant of Ram's qualities. So it was not just about age, it was about qualities of the Lord Ram. And this is where we need to bring in the point that this Ram and Lakshman, they appear again and again in different incarnations as different brothers. And in each incarnation, Lakshman, or whichever form he takes, he is always going to be the servant only of Ram or Krishna, right? So just like in the Dwapar Yuga, when they come as Balram and Krishna, we again see there that Balram, even though he's elder now, technically he's elder, and of course he takes some advantage of that position, but by and large, still Balram is considered the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead, right? He's still doing everything to please Krishna. And in Kali Yuga, when they come as Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, we see that Nityananda Prabhu was 20 years elder than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 20, which is like substantial. That is, Balram was only 1 year elder to Krishna, correct? But our 1 year, or some people say 15 days, whatever it is. But as far as Nityananda and Chaitanya are concerned, their age difference was 20 years. So by all means, Nityananda Prabhu was, much elder than Mahaprabhu. But still we see in that entire Leela, he is subservient only to him. And he's performing all his activities in a mood of pleasing him. So you can connect all these three Leelas of these two brothers from this particular verse of the Ramayana. And what does this verse say? The most important part of this verse is Gunai Dasyam Upagataha. Lakshman is saying that I am his servant because of his qualities. It has nothing to do with age or anything. Okay, so I may be younger in this life, but that's a different matter. But I am his servant because of his unimaginable good qualities. Okay, so the only difference between Lakshman, Balram, and Nityananda is their mood. Okay, so this one point I'll highlight and then we will end today's discussion. So it is said that Lakshman was a servant as a loyalist. He was always loyal. That means he was a servant, but he exhibited loyalty. Whatever Ram said, he just did it. No questions asked. Okay, so that type of servant. Balaram was also servant, but in the mood of a separatist. This is a different flavor of servitorship. Okay, Nityananda was a mood of a servant as an extremist. Okay, so we will just briefly discuss this and end today's discussion. So Lakshman was loyalist, we all know this. Whatever Ram said, Lakshman did. There was no question asked. Ram tells Lakshman that, come on, light Agni. Let Sita enter Agni now. Lakshman did it. There was no question being asked that, how can I do this? She's, how can I light fire for Sita to enter? And then later when they come back to Ayodhya, when the Dhobi says whatever he says, Ram calls Lakshman and says, come on, take Sita to Valmiki's ashram and drop her there. She's pregnant at that time. Again, no questions asked. Lakshman cannot ask anything. He's just a loyal servant. Seshatvam manifested completely. Whatever Ram says, he just does it. It is like you give a command to your iPhone, do this. And then the iPhone does it. You tell the iPhone, no, come on, tomorrow morning, 4 a.m., you have to wake me up. Then the phone is not going to say, Arey, tonight you have slept very late. How can you get up at 4 a.m. in the morning? No, it will just do whatever you have said. Okay, so Lakshman was that type of loyalist, like as if inanimate object, obeying whatever Ram told. But in Leela, Krishna and Balram, again, Balram is servant only. But now he is manifesting a separatist mentality. That is again for his pleasure. Like in childhood, we see that when there was this whole controversy whether Krishna ate mud or no, it was Balramji who told Yashoda that he has eaten mud. Okay, so there itself, it became very clear in childhood that Balram is not going to be on Krishna's side. He's going to take an opposite party only. Right? He just took the opposite party as a separatist. And we see that happening throughout. When we see Krishna marrying Rukmini, at that time, Krishna had, shaved off Rukmi, right? The brother of Rukmini in 5 places. When Balram saw that, he became very angry with Krishna. He told him that, why, how can you do like this to our brother-in-law? You can't do this. This is not correct. And the same Balramji killed Rukmi later, right? We all know that when the marriage of Aniruddha or one of the marriage was happening, at that time, there was this gambling match and there was some misunderstanding. And Rukmi was trying to cheat Balramji, and Balramji became so angry that he killed him in that marriage ceremony. Okay, so the same Balramji had told Krishna that, why did you shave him in 5 places? But then he killed him, he knocked him off. So we see many examples like this. The most the stark example is that of Balram very pleased with Duryodhan. And that also happens during the Shamantaka Muni episode, when there was accusation that Krishna had stolen the Shamantaka. According to Harivamsha, it is said that Balramji went away to Mithila. He was also a little upset that why is Krishna doing all this? So he had some doubt. And it is at that time Duryodhan went to Mithila and he learned everything about mace fighting from Balramji. Okay, and then later also we see in Kurukshetra, initially Balram said, I'm just walking out. I'm not going to be there only in the forest. But final day he comes and he kind of supports Duryodhan. He says Duryodhan was only righteous. Bhima killed him in the wrong way. No matter what, I will not accept this. So basically Balramji throughout the life, he shows that mood of separatist. But then we understand that this is all for Krishna's pleasure only. Because for some inconceivable reason, Krishna always wanted Balramji to serve him in this capacity. And Balramji was doing that. This becomes even more clear in Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, where we see that Nityananda behaves as an extremist. Extremist as in, now Mahaprabhu takes sannyas and Nityananda Prabhu is always dressing in fine clothes, lot of jewels, right? He's married 2 times, 2 wives he has. And so similarly, if you see several things like this, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu sitting to eat together at whatever Ramanujacarya's house, Mahaprabhu is saying that, why have you served so much food? I am sannyasi, I can't eat so much. This is enough for 100 people. And Nityananda Prabhu says that, this is not even enough for 1 corner of my belly. What nonsense. He throws that rice and Ramanujacarya starts dancing. And, so if you see all the stories of Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, we see that contrast. Mahaprabhu stands for high level of discipline. And Nityananda Prabhu apparently stands for a completely opposite example. Where apparently it seems as if there is no discipline, it is all about spontaneity and fun. So our acharyas also say that that's a very interesting example of Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, because it shows that that is how life is supposed to be. There is supposed to be discipline in life, and there is also supposed to be spontaneity and fun. Okay, so Mahaprabhu is standing for that high level of discipline, and Nityananda Prabhu stands for a fun and extreme behavior, right? So Mahaprabhu preaches to all scholars and so many such people, and Nityananda Prabhu goes to Jagai Madai, goes to a wine shop, he goes to people like that to preach. Okay, very, very extreme in terms of his service. But in all these incarnations, they are all exhibiting the same mood. What is that? Gunai dasyam upagataha. They are servant of the qualities of the Supreme Lord. Okay, so there are many more things to talk about Seshatvam, but I think I'll stop here because the next story is again a very long story where we will connect Seshatvam and Paratantrya. So the sixth one is Paratantrya. I will just end with just defining the term. Paratantriyam basically, so Seshatvam is like an inanimate object serving somebody, right? Like give an example of a mobile phone or our car or something, which is like our servant in one sense. It's like an inanimate object, no questions asked. Whatever I tell my mobile phone, it will do that. So that is Seshatvam. Like that means the devotee is serving the Lord as if he doesn't have any separate existence only. कुछ मतलब उसका खुद का कोई अस्तित्व ही नहीं है. From that perspective, he is serving. That is called Seshatvam. Paratantriyam, on the other hand, means very consciously following the instructions or very consciously trying to serve the Lord in careful ways. That is called Paratantriyam. So that's like an advanced version of Seshatvam. So first the idea is that you serve the Lord as if you don't even exist. And then the idea is that you serve the Lord very thoughtfully, trying to serve him in the best possible way. And that's what Paratantriyam is all about. Okay, so we are going to see obviously these examples next time. So I'll just summarize very quickly between what we saw today in a minute, and then we will take questions. So I started with this whole idea of so before Seshatvam, we started talking about Purushartha, right? We said that how the first thing I spoke was about how different people have different things as Purushartha, right? Like for the dog, the Purushartha is vomit. For the cow, Purushartha is grass. For the horse, it has its own Purushartha. For human beings, Purushartha is food. Like Bharat's army, most people, once their belly is full, they're very happy. They don't want anything else. So that is Purushartha for different people. But for a devotee of God, the Purushartha is devotional service. So that's where we started. Then we defined Seshatvam from Panini grammar by saying that Seshat, that means there is the main object and whatever remains is called as Sesha. So we said that how the Vedas explain the Supreme Lord as this main personality who is the enjoyer, and everything else is, Sesha. Okay, so that's what we saw. And then, so after seeing the definition, we saw how Lakshman and Shatrughna were born as Sesha. And then we also saw a little bit about how Prasad and the concept of Sesha. Then we saw the story of Vishwamitra asking for Ram, Dasharath not even lamenting for Lakshman, Vashishta. Everybody is talking only about Ram, but Lakshman just follows, just on one instruction. Okay, so this is what we saw today about that. And then we also saw that beautiful story of Ram testing Lakshman. Ram is testing Lakshman by telling him that, hey, Lakshman, look, you need to go back because your mother is going to be in a crisis situation. And generally people are, most people tend to be very sensitive, or, they can be very touchy when it comes to their mother. So he's invoking his mother and saying that, please go back. But then Lakshman says that, no, there is no question. Neither Sita or I are going to go, just like a fish cannot be out of water. And then we saw about the greatness of Lakshman's mother, Sumitra, because when she sent him off, she said, go and serve Ram. Don't keep sitting here. And look at Ram as your father and Janaki as your mother. And then we saw Lakshman's mood always. He felt that I'm a servant of Lord Ram's qualities. So it was not just about being a younger brother. And that's why we see that in later incarnations, they were always, he was still always the servant. Okay, so this is where we are today, and we will now take some questions if there are any. Okay, any question related to the topic? Yes, Dinabandhu Chaitanya Prabhu, you have something? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Thank you for bringing out this Sheshatvam so beautifully. So for this pastime of Lord Ram teaching Lakshmana, and then Lakshman saying that neither me nor Sita can live without you, just like fish cannot be without water, and Ayodhya is like milk. So actually, there he, I mean, in one sense, Lakshman doesn't answer the apparent, I mean, the questions put up by Lord Ram, right? I mean, although Lord Ram himself might not have meant it in terms of saying that Bharat is.
Yeah, that is the
So,
beauty. That's the point. The point is that those statements of Ram were all like a test. That was not significant. Ram was bringing out all these emotional points just to make Lakshman little bit, sensitive that our mothers will be in trouble. So let me go back. So actually, none of those points were valid. But that's what Ram was testing him. So because it is a test, all what he said was that content was not serious, but the test was the real thing. And Lakshman passed the test because he just refused. He said, "There's no question of me going back." So that is how you see the story. That's exactly the point. Ram was never serious about those points. Is that okay? Make sense?
So Lakshman understood that Ram didn't mean it.
Yeah. In fact, later it comes very prominently when Bharat is coming. The same Ram, in a couple of days, he's telling Lakshman, how can you tell like that about Bharat? I know him very well. If you want, you become the king. I will tell Bharat that make you the king, and he will immediately make you. He's not interested in all that. So now he was telling that, Bharat is coming. He's going to enjoy. Bharat will not take care of your mother and my mother. You only have to go and take care of our mothers. But Ram did not mean it. And the proof of that is in a few days, Ram completely changes his approach when Bharat is coming. So it was a test. And Lakshman passed it, by insisting on his position. Is that okay?
Yeah, right. In fact, it seems like Lakshman rather, had this, doubt about Bharat at that point in Chitrakoot. So,
yeah.
I mean,
but that was not a pastime. That was not a pastime. So the difference here is Ram is saying like that about Bharat, but internally not meaning it. But when Lakshman said about Bharat that he's coming to kill you, Lakshman actually meant it at that point. As in Lakshman was not testing Ram, right? I mean, he was meaning it, and that's why that was a problem. But what Ram said was not a problem because he never meant it. He was only testing. That makes sense, right?
Yes. And the other point which you mentioned, Prabhuji, about you said that typically whoever we offer the food first, and then it becomes a shesha of that person, so that's why whenever we have guests at home, we are supposed to, we are supposed to offer it to the Lord, and then only that shesha should be given to everybody, rather than, we don't eat first. But then, yes, Prabhu, you wanted to say something?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So, I think in a practical scenario, what happens is, like, many times our meetings and all are like bit. So when we host meetings, so it's a bit late in the night, and then we want to get up early in the morning. So many times we just justify things, or we just say, okay, I'll be better in a position to serve if I, if we. So so again, like this standard which you mentioned, like how much do we?
Good point. Actually, what I feel now, at least when we call someone specifically as a guest home, see, one thing is these programs which are there, right? Satsang programs that we host, like whether a counseling meeting or some Bhakti Shastri program or something like that. That's different actually, because there, it's slightly different. It's not that it's still they are guests only at home. I mean, if ideally somebody could follow that standard, it's good. But at least if we call someone home specifically, for lunch or dinner, then at least that time one should generally, it's considered the right etiquette to wait for them and then only eat. I mean, you have called two people home, let us say, then you can't eat before those two people actually sit and eat because you have called them home. So they become a very specific atiti. I would say that satsang programs are more general in the sense, like, too many people are coming, going, and it's still not at that same level. I mean, just to make that distinction. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. I think that's thank you.
Very well. Anybody else with any other question today based on what we discussed?
Haribol Prabhu,
Haribol, Rajendra Kumar,
can you?
go ahead.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
So there are so many examples in Ramayana about duty, relationship, brother relationships, and towards parents, and so many. So considering today's Kali Yuga setting, how much to emulate those examples? Because we are not having perfect brothers, perfect parents, perfect situations. And someone can tell that, oh, in Ramayana this was followed and this was followed, so why don't you follow the same thing? So how to understand?
Good point. Actually, this will come ahead in one of our points, but since you asked me the question, I will say it right away. There is this discussion between Jabali and Lord Ram. This happens in the Ayodhya Kand, where Jabali tells Ram that, hey Ram, what is all this Shraddha and all that? Dasharath is already dead and he's gone somewhere. Why should we do anything? He says many things. We will go into that dialogue in great detail later, because that is also one of the 18 things learned by Ramanujacarya. But one very important lesson that comes out there is, I'm only telling the lesson right now. I'll elaborate the example later. The lesson that comes there is to think that Shastra is not applicable at some point of time is also considered one kind of atheism. I repeat again, to think that Shastras are not applicable at a particular point. Like somebody says, oh, abhi ye sab to chalega hi nahi, Prabhuji, ye Kali Yuga, none of these things that are said in Shastra work. So to think like that. So ideally, it is said what one should think is that this is the ideal thing to do, or this is the ideal thing to be in. But I am not at that level, so that's still fine. But to say that Shastra itself is less applicable, that becomes, that is considered one kind of atheism. Okay. So the way we see, so firstly, I certainly agree with you that Ramayana is giving very high standards for relationships. In fact, we are going to explore that later. There is one whole lesson on how Ram was the ideal son, ideal husband, everything. So that part will come later, ideal brother and all that. That will come later. We have not even discussed that lesson. But the point is, we have to see how much of it we can do. That's what scriptures are for, to encourage us to go beyond than where we are right now. Okay, so certainly it is understandable that nobody is going to be so exalted in their behavior with their family members as Lord Ram was. But then he's the ideal. It's like ideal is the ideal. So you just strive to see how close you can go to that. Right? How close you can go to that. I mean, and what to speak of Ram? If you see Prahalad, a few days ago was Narsingh Chaturdashi. So Prahalad's father Hiranyakashipu was a very big demon, but still Prahalad was very respectful towards him till the end. And even when Hiranyakashipu died, Prahalad asked the Lord to forgive his father. And Prahalad did all the final rites, the Shraddha ceremony for his father, though his father was attempting to kill him in multiple ways. So that's another very opposite example, where the father was extremely demoniac, but the son was great. Okay, so all kinds of examples are there in the scripture, basically to encourage us to come up to whatever level we could. Is that okay?
Yeah, bro, it was helpful. Prahlad Maharaj's example was helpful. Yeah, thank you, bro.
Yeah, thank you, Haribol. If there are no other questions, we will conclude. Anyone else with any question or comment? Anybody liked or found any part interesting? Anything? Okay, it seems that's it.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you.
Yes,
for
Mithanimaya Prabhu, please. Yeah.
Prabhuji, you gave the example of mobile phone. Lakshman was following Lord Ram. So, and you said that, but in day-to-day practical life, right? And this question is related to, especially towards the professional life. There, if we become like perfect followers and lose that competitive spirit, what is the ideal way actually to go to be the perfect follower or to compete? What is it?
No, perfect follower of whom? I didn't understand. Whom are we talking of here?
So you gave the example of Lakshman and Lord Ram, right? So how he was following him. So this situation comes in, in the professional world as well, that, we have to follow people. So do we follow as it is, or, we evaluate, and then accordingly
Okay,
we
first of all, yeah, understood. First of all, this example of Seshatvam applies to the Lord. That means Seshatvam applies to the devotee in his service to the Lord. That means the idea here is that just like Lakshman literally served Ram as if he did not even exist as a separate individual, with great amount of individuality and so on, just did, like, so in that context, I gave the example of a mobile phone, that our mobile phone serves us without any questions asked, right? It is just an inanimate object. Whatever we say, it just does. Wherever we go, it comes with us. So just like the mobile phone is for us, Lakshman, Sheshatvam, Lakshman was like that for Ram. So that's the mood of a devotee towards the Lord, where we are aspiring to serve him, just like an ordinary object, without anything that I need a lot of recognition and so on. So that is Sheshatvam. When it comes to the professional world, serving our boss or something, or obeying those orders, there perhaps, there we cannot employ this particular concept of Seshatvam, because constitutionally we are not servant of anybody other than the Supreme Lord. So there, this is not going to come so much actually. There, Seshatvam will not come. There, yes, one thing will come, that as long as we are an employee of somebody and we are taking money from them, we have to be loyal to them, as in we should not cheat them and, be like a kamchor, etc. So
yes, got it.
Relationship of Sheshatvam is only with the Lord. It's not with anybody else. It's a very unique relationship. Only because the Lord is a central figure and everybody else is Shesha, like that. I hope that clarifies.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Haribol, who's that? Yeah, okay.
Prabhuji,
Yeah,
stay
go ahead,
with
Prabhuji.
us. Prabhuji,
understood.
thank you for the wonderful class and very inspiring. I just have a question, this Sheshatvam of Lakshmana, that three leelas that you spoke about, that was carried out in Ramayana and Krishna Leela and Chaitanya Leela. How is it in other avatars of the Lord, like Lord Narasimha Dev came and Vamana Dev came, so many Dasha avatars came. Was it also exhibited, this Sheshatvam, or is it that Sheshatvam is because he was not a central individual character that came in the Leela, or how is it like?
Oh, yeah, because those leelas where the Lord did not come with a brother like this explicitly, then only his paraphernalia were Shesha for him. Like Narsingh Dev and all, he came alone only. There wasn't any brother. It was just his paraphernalia. So I think this comes only in these three avatars, Lord Ram, Krishna, Mahaprabhu, or some such cases where you see that Shesha is also coming. So please note that Lakshman is Shesha himself, right? He is Shesha, Adi Shesha, who has come in this particular role. So Adi Shesha need not always accompany the Lord in his avatars in this world, because sometimes the Lord comes very briefly, right? Other than Rama, Krishna and Mahaprabhu, who lived long in the world, all other avatars are very brief. Vamana avatar, Narsingh avatar, they just come, finish the work and they go back. So there is not too much. So all these other people are just, not always that Adi Shesha is coming, at least explicitly. He may come as an umbrella or some paraphernalia, but not as a person, exhibiting qualities. Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Last question. I think Ujjwal Radhe Mataji has a question, or someone else has.
Yes. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the class, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question has two parts. The first part is, you were telling about how Sumitra being the ideal mother, like how she gave her two sons for the service of Ram. Lakshmanji especially. And then it was compared with how Prabhupada has instructed that, one of your sons you have to give for devotional service. So and you said it was at that time when parents had about 4 children. So right now it's it's not the case. So how do we see it in the present circumstance? That's part one. And the second part of question is, Prabhuji, like always there's a tendency, I mean, it's a practical question, that there is a tendency to look back at the past as something which was more ideal, a period to live in than the present. So that, I mean, looking at the past more in that way makes us feel that we're currently living in a more imperfect world. So in this context, like once I was hearing Chaitanya Sharan Prabhu saying that, no, it's not about turning back the clock, but what we have to do is we have to readjust the compass. So how do we practically do this, Prabhuji?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so first thing, I told about Prabhupada because Ramanujacarya's comment is there on this particular verse, where he tells that just like Sumitra gave Lakshman to the service of Ram, every mother should give one son at least for the preaching of the Sampradaya. Okay, and Prabhupada also said something very similar, and that's why I quoted. But though one difference was, Prabhupada was asking for a son in a more in a monastic monastery, where Prabhupada wanted Indian families to give their son as a brahmachari, who would join the temple. At least immediately it was like that. So I think as far as we people are concerned, we may just have one or two children. Nowadays, most people have one child, or maximum people have two. Rarely someone has three. But in any case, you can give all your children to the Sampradaya, not in the sense that the children have to necessarily give up everything in the world and be, but wherever they are, they could, they could be doing their profession or whatever. But that spirit of wanting to do something for a Vaishnava Sampradaya must be there. I think that's the practical lesson that we can see. It's not about giving in the sense of giving like making the son a sannyasi. So that may be very rare, and that's not even in our hand. The son should have that type of an astrology to be like that. But that is immaterial. Even if that is not going to happen, at least on a practical level, if we can inspire our children to have some missionary spirit, to do some kind of preaching, to do some kind of outreach later in life, for that the foundation, if we can inbuilt in our children, then they will be of some service to the cause of preaching the movement, whatever Acharyas wanted. I think that's a very practical lesson. And the second comment that you said, I very much agree with you. It's that this tendency is there to look at the past as everything perfect, and modern times as completely imperfect. And though certain things, certain scriptures or certain stories do appear to be more perfect than normal situations, like Ramayana is one, because the love of the brothers, like for example, there are so many things, like in the Ramayana, if you see the four brothers, none of them had a child. Even Bharat and Shatrughna, though they were back in Ayodhya, they never had their children until Lord Ram came back, and after they had their children, only those brothers had their children. Because it was in their mind that our brother has gone to the forest. It's not that we are going to stay back in Ayodhya and have children and have a gala party over here. They are also going to be in the mood of a renounced life, like a forest ascetic life. So there are many things about the Ramayana that are extremely ideal, which are not very easy to see. But having said that, yes, in general, this whole idea that everything in the past was too perfect and now it's not like that. Even though it is Kali Yuga, in the middle of this imperfection, there are people who are doing things nicely, or as you said, orienting their compass and doing things to the best of their ability. And in previous ages, also in Satyuga, there was Hiranyakashipu, who in that perfect world of Satyuga was creating terror. So yeah, all kinds of people and situations do exist. That part is accepted very much. Okay, so I think we should stop here. Yeah, thank you very much everyone for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thanks.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bhava.